Hello everybody, it's Chris Clark with DiscGolf.Law. Recently, Kevin Jones and Väinö Mäkelä parted ways with their primary sponsor, Prodigy Discs. These announcements made news for several reasons. Kevin and Väinö are well-known, well-liked, successful veteran players. It's rare to see a player's primary sponsorship relationship change mid-season. It's rare to see player contracts end when there was still so much time left. Kevin Jones's Prodigy contract would have run through the end of 2025, and Väinö Mäkelä's would have run through the end of 2026. And neither Prodigy nor Kevin nor Väinö have given much explanation of what's going on. It's no secret that many segments of the disc golf industry have been in decline, and manufacturers are no exception. Were these money-saving moves by a cash-strapped Prodigy? Or was Prodigy disappointed with Kevin's and Väinö's performances on tour this year? Kevin's best finish so far was 20th place at Music City Open, and Väinö's was 13th at the Chess.com Invitational. However, both players remain in the PDGA World Rankings top 35. So was there some other reason, or even different reasons for the two players, and maybe the timing was a coincidence? I don't know the answers to these questions. Our law firm doesn't represent Kevin or Väinö or Prodigy, but we do write contracts for a living and have worked on lots of disc golf sponsorship contracts. We can make some educated guesses and share some basic information about how contracts are typically terminated. Now, almost every contract has what we call a term. The term of a contract is simply how long the contract is or will be in effect. Sometimes contracts have a fixed term, after which the contract ends. Sometimes at the end of a fixed term, the contract renews automatically. Sometimes contracts give an effective date on which the contract starts, and there is no fixed end date. The contract simply continues until it's terminated. But how do you do that? If you're a party to a contract, how do you terminate it? That mostly depends on the language of the contract, but let me give you 4 of the most typical examples. There's almost always the option to end a contract through a mutual termination. If all parties to a contract want the contract to end, regardless of what the termination provisions in the contract say, in every situation I can think of, the parties can agree, usually in writing, to terminate the contract. That very well could have been what happened with Kevin and Väinö. A player and a sponsor can always have a conversation and agree that for whatever reasons, the relationship isn't working anymore, and they both think that it's the right decision to terminate. Many contracts provide that either party can terminate at any time for any reason by giving the other party written notice of their intent to terminate. This notice usually has a time frame attached to it, such as 30 days, for example. If Kevin or Väinö's contract contained this type of provision, their contracts could have been terminated simply by one party giving notice to the other party. In situations that I mentioned previously where a contract has a fixed term that automatically renews, a common way contracts like this can be terminated if one party or the other gives a notice of termination a certain number of days before the contract is set to renew. Sometimes contracts can only be terminated if one party or the other breaches the contract. Depending on the type of breach, a party might have a period of time in which they can cure the breach, correct whatever issue that was causing them to be in violation of the contract. If they cure the breach within the amount of time specified in the contract is not terminated. If they don't, the contract ends. These are just 4 of dozens or maybe even hundreds of ways contract termination can be structured. In Prodigy's case, I think the first option I described, which was mutual termination, both parties agree to terminate is the most likely, but I also wouldn't rule out the fourth option where one party or the other breached the contract. It could even be a combination of these two reasons. Let me tell you what I mean. Contracts can have targets or milestones that a party must meet in order to remain in compliance with the contract's terms. Theoretically, a sponsor could require a player to make the podium at a Disc Golf Pro Tour event once a month, and if they don't, the sponsor could have the option to terminate the contract. That's an absurd example, and I've never personally seen a disc golf contract this demanding. Using your imagination, you could probably come up with some more realistic criteria that a sponsor would require a player to meet, especially in some of the larger contracts we've seen in recent years. Keep in mind, this goes both ways. One obvious way that Prodigy could breach a player's contract is by not paying the player. If Prodigy is in a cash crunch or anticipates that it might be soon, it might have struck a deal to release Kevin and Väinö early in order to save money. Understand that regardless of what your written contract says, the parties can negotiate a change at any time. What we know for sure is that something happened to bring about a premature end of these two Prodigy contracts. The fact that they happened so closely in time to one another, and the fact that both Kevin and Väinö immediately announced that they were joining Team Innova, suggests to me some behind-the-scenes discussions among everyone involved, and likely an agreed-to settlement with Prodigy to avoid the potential public embarrassment and expense of litigating one or more breach of contract cases. This news brought out a wave of social media speculation. Hell Camino wrote, "In many contracts that cover multiple years, there are often stability clauses that say the terms of the agreement can be renegotiated if certain criteria are met. In my experience, it's rare for a disc golf sponsor contract to contain these types of provisions, but in my opinion, they often should." Several other people theorized that Prodigy is dumping some of its big dollar contracts either in preparation for getting acquired, some speculated by House of Discs, or offering big money contracts to other players such as Isaac and Ezra Robinson. So my question for you, what do you think is most likely? Did Kevin and Väinö somehow breach their contracts? Was Prodigy running out of money? Is Prodigy about to get acquired, and if so, by what company? Let us know in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.